Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens, the screenwriting step-by-step project, episode number 199, 199 sessions, steps on this process. My name is Glenn Gers. I come to you every Monday through Friday, if I can make it, at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, to let you look over my shoulder, share my screen while I write a script. I am doing this to demystify the process of writing scripts. I think that that's a part of screenwriting teaching that is rather under-taught, the actual mechanical process of getting ideas and thoughts and feelings into script format, writing an outline, writing a rough draft, writing a rewrite. That process is kind of the same no matter what script you're writing. Everyone has their own process. I am not saying this is the only process. It's just the one that I figured out in a 25-year career writing for TV and movies. I had to kind of teach myself because there wasn't much in the way of how to write books back in the 80s. I know that sounds crazy. There are only 2 or 3. I read them all. And then I had to figure out for myself, how do I actually do this thing? I think I figured out some tips and tricks that might be helpful to you. So I thought the best way to let you learn them is just to let you see me do them. You can use them or not that way. It's not like there's a grand system. It's not like this is the official how to make $1 million and win an award. It's just a way to get your ideas into script form, because you can't write a great script if you can't write a script. So that's how I'm doing it. That's what we're doing. And the way I'm doing it here is I am going through the script scene by scene and rewriting it. Right now, we have a draft. I've actually gone through it once already, and now I am going to rewrite certain scenes, because once I read the thing, I began to think, there's a problem with a subplot. There's a subplot that I had a great idea for, and I didn't see the mechanical difference, the mechanical way to make it work, which is to get these people into the same room at the same time. I kept thinking, oh, you don't need to do that. It was too much work. It might be silly. And then I realized when I reread it, and often you can't see, no matter how brilliantly you plan, no matter how great you have an intellectual theory or how much you're like another story or movie, until you actually read your own draft, you can't begin to really see what's good and bad about it, what you need to do to make it work the way it could work, or how to make the things that work more important. Because a lot of the times, the point of a rewrite is to say, oh, cool, I didn't realize how good this part is going to be. I have to work to make that stand out more. Anyway, so the point is, I realized that this subplot with these characters who are all online, that they should be coming to the place where the action is happening. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just rewriting just those scenes. Hi, Cyrus. Hi, Orphe. Great to see you all. So that's the deal. I'm doing what's called a pass. In the business, writers often talk about doing a pass on the script, which means you do a rewrite from beginning to end. You don't always do a pass on the whole thing. Like right now, I am just doing this rewrite on these particular side characters. I'm leaving the main characters alone. I'm not rewriting their scenes right now. I'm not even looking at them. I am just saying these particular characters, their story, their character arc, I need to focus on as if it's the center of the story. Because this is something I really think is important. Most writers don't focus on this. I did a whole video on it called Building Character Arcs. And the point about that is that every character, they're living their whole life. They're not like waiting around to be in the other scene. They think everything that's happening is in their story, because from their point of view, it is. And so every one of them is acting from their needs. For them, the scene is about something different than it is for you and for the main character. And as long as you keep that in mind, those scenes become better because each character is authentic. They are really, really acting the way people in life would act. That is the name of the game here. All right. I had just finished rewriting the scene with Billy and McLean. By the way, Cyrus had asked me a question, which I will answer in writing, but or I'll try to. But right now, you're right here, Cyrus. I'm going to answer you. Cyrus asked if, when I wrote this scene, I was thinking it was important to have this scene because it was McLean is a gay character, and I wanted to have that to add that for either marketing reasons or social justice reasons. In other words, was this a conscious plan, or was it something that came, quote, organically from the characters? The answer is yeah. I wasn't consciously saying, oh, I need to do this. I was saying, oh, I think it would be interesting. The main thing I was thinking was, I don't want all my characters to be alike. Just that simple. Like, if every single character is like our main characters, the whole thing is either then you're writing about a class or group of people, or you're not writing truly what the experience of life is, which is people are different. So I thought, what can I do to distinguish these characters? The first thing I had to think of was, what purpose do they serve in the story? That was my first thing. And the whole point about McLean was that he was very analytical. That was what he was good at detecting. He was smart. And in this group, that actually is rare, because this group of amateur detectives mostly are nut jobs, or just real amateurs, if not nuts. So therefore, the point is that my first job when I was doing this, I was saying, okay, the main characters are these two people who get dragged into this group of amateur detectives. The other is the leader of the group, because she's going to turn out to be the villain. Then I have all these other characters. Well, how do I make them characters? One of the main things is they have to serve some purpose in the story. Like Shrimpton in this story serves the purpose of grounding it. She is the one who says, I'm not totally taking this I'm not prioritizing hunting serial killers over everyday life. Everyday life is more valuable. That's important, because McLean is so into solving puzzles and mysteries that he does prioritize it. Dundosky is prioritizing it because it's about justice. In other words, I wanted him to be involved in this crime hunting because crimes, need to be hunted. There's an actual moral, emotional imperative involved. So very often I create characters in order to carry ideas, to speak for thoughts or feelings. And that is what I was doing with this. Oh, I didn't know you deleted that. That's so funny. I often get a bunch of comments, so sometimes I don't answer them right away. It might take me a day or two. So yes, I did indeed read it. Never delete stuff. You never know. It might just take me a while to get to it. I might be busy. So I'm answering now, which is, so my first step with McLean was to think, who is he in terms of the story, in terms of what we need to understand about this group? Then, having done that, I was literally just tossing out characteristics. And I thought, okay, he's a guy who works on Wall Street or in the financial industry. I just wanted that because I just thought it's an interesting venue. And also, I didn't want everyone in the group to be a, quote, loser. In other words, financially marginalized. I thought it's very important that we be of a wide variety. So we have Shrimpton, who's a nurse, which is actually morally stronger than every other character, and Dundosky, who's a drug dealer, and McLean, who's a financial analyst. I wanted to give a sense that these people are coming from all sorts of different places. They're not just one type of person. That was my main thing. Having done that, I then had to come up with a scene for each of them to show their life and qualities about them. So I was thinking about Billy, and I thought, make him gay. There was no political agenda to that, except I just want him to be different and interesting from the other people, just like I made Shrimpton a nurse in a cancer ward, chemotherapy office, partly because I wanted to, with each one of them, I wanted to say, give them something that we can say, they are not just story. When people ask me, how do you make a good character? The first thing I think of is what makes a character is that they are not just a type, which is static. but instead that they have a thing they want, that they are a character, that they have a thing they want, and a thing that they are, that the details about their lives. I ask the famous 6 questions. This is what, to me, helps define a character, which is that they have something that they want, that they are taking action for a reason, a personal reason. So those are the things that I ask about every character. In this case, I thought, well, what McLean wants is to solve puzzles. And then that was all I had. It's just he's really into the intellectual end of it, the smarts part. And just like for Shrimpton, I thought she's into the escape part of this activity. And Dodowski's part of the justice, and Ted is part of the the conspiracy theory. Anyway, so each person has their own motive. So when I thought about McLean and I said make him gay, it was just, I just want him to have some flavor, something about him that is arbitrarily lifelike. And that's one of the things that I think you do when you've got a character. Nobody is just one thing. You could be, famously, they're just like the worst person in the world is nice to their dog or their relatives or whatever. The best person in the world still cheats on their partner. There are so many examples of humanity being complicated, and I believe that we recognize the humanity of characters more easily when they are not just one thing. Just that simple. It's not as easy as to say, give them the opposite. A lot of screenwriting theorists, they'll say, give them the opposite. Well, maybe, but it doesn't have to be the opposite. It could just be like, literally, they like ice cream. They're germaphobes. They have a bad... There's a character in The Night Of. The Night Of is a phenomenal miniseries that was on HBO a couple years ago with Riz Ahmed, John Turturro. And John Turturro plays a lawyer, and he has a foot infection. He has just this skin condition in his feet. This has nothing to do with anything. It's just an interesting thing, and there's a lot of detail about it, and there's so many details in that script. Richard Price wrote it with Steve Salian, the freaking brilliant writers. Anyway, what's great about that character is he has this foot problem, which he's really smart, but he's also kind of physically disgusting, but he's also kind of nice. There's no formula for that. That's exactly the point, is that it's anti-formula. It's not what you think, that a person who has a physically disgusting ailment at the same time can be morally courageous and smart and a lot of good things. Anyway, so that's the point. The question of why is McLean this character? Because I just wanted, I thought, okay, honestly, I think the way my unconscious went was Wall Street, New York, upscale, and then I thought gym. I just thought like those upscale gyms that you always see on TV and movies, which really barely are, only the most elite people in the world can afford those kind of gym memberships. So I thought he'd be one of those guys. And then I thought, okay, gym membership. And I thought, oh, well, maybe he's got an attraction to one of the other guys. And I just went from there because it was just a story. It's just an association, random association. And the next thing that followed from that, though, was I thought, okay, and this is where the crafting part comes in, is that I thought, how can I take this element of his story, which is that he wants to flirt with someone, and have that be part of his character as far as the detecting goes? And I thought, well, what if he, where did this come from? I don't know. What if he he compulsively analyzes, he compulsively detects, and that the reason that he loves being in this group so much is that he's allowed to detect. Because in average life, if you walk into rooms and do the Sherlock Holmes thing of, I see you were playing in the garden yesterday, and I see your dog has the tendency to chew on the left side of its mouth, all that stuff, you're creepy. And I wanted that to be McLean, that this is a who cannot help detect. So that's where it came from. Was I thinking this will be commercially viable? No, doesn't occur to me. Not that it doesn't occur to me ordinarily, but I don't. I mean, at this point, I suspect it is in the process of thinking. That's one of the things I think about. Just like I think, is it interesting? Is it morally responsible or moving? Is it something that is going to either make things more or less interesting to the system, the financial system of making things? Anyway, that was my long explanation for that. Hi, Tavana. Hi, Di. Hi, Ellen. Thank you. And hi, Jean. Okay, everybody's here. Lots of people here. So anyway, the answer to that is, how do you create a character? The question was, how calculated is your creation of creative things in terms of what the business wants? And my answer is, you don't have to be calculated about that, but if you're not, be aware that you are making it harder to sell. Selling is not the only reason you do things. It really isn't. Please, if there's anything, listen to me. Selling is not the only reason you write. Okay, so, all right, so that's how we got Billy and McLean. Now, we finished Billy and McLean. That scene was done. So let's look at the outline and see what next we have to do. All right. So what do we got here? So we got Billy and McLean. So the next thing we got is Ted arrives in town and meets Dundowski. And he's in a lunatic's RV. Right. Okay. Cool. So where is that scene? Hold on. That scene is after Shrimpton and McLean on the train. Okay. So we got Shrimpton. Then we got... okay. So I think the question is now, so here's what we're doing. I have this scene which I need to accomplish. In this scene, Ted drives up in his RV and Dundowski sees him. Dundowski is saying, don't, like, be subtle. Don't disturb the subjects of our surveillance. Ted has his own agenda. So therefore, we've got several elements. We've got the element that Dundowski is there. He spent the night in his car outside the house. And we've got Ted arriving in his RV. So, and this is just the process by which one writes. Okay. Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Okay, click. Yes, go ahead. Click that. Thumb. Give me. All right. I just did it. Okay. So, writing a scene. How do we write a scene? I'm picturing, first of all, the actual what happens. That's the first thing you need to have in your head. What actually is happening? Not how am I going to show it? What cool way am I going to film it? Or how they're going to act it? But what happens? So what happens is Ted arrives in his RV, which means it's a RV driving down the road, has to show up outside of the house, and then Dundowski has to go to him, to Ted, and because Ted would not know that Dundowski was there. Ted would not know Dundowski's car or anything. So it's going to be up to Dundowski to make a contact with Ted and to say, get out of here. That's the scene. Now, so the question becomes, how do I describe that? How do I tell you as a reader what's happening? Because when you describe a scene, when you write a scene, you are steering the brain. The mind's eye is seeing the scene depending on how you describe it. So, for instance, if I start this scene by saying Ted's RV drives up and parks, so we have exterior, George's house. That's it. Morning. The same time. Okay, so one way I could do it is to have Ted's RV drives up and parks, and then Dundosky sees him and comes over. The reason that I don't particularly want to do that is because, sorry, sometimes you hit the wrong key. What I'm thinking is the last thing, like, you sort of put yourself in the audience's place watching this movie. They're watching it on a screen, they're watching it in a theater, and they are watching a scene with McLean and Billy on the train. Billy walks away. Then we cut to Shrimpton. Okay, so now we're saying, we are finding out where all the other people are. We're checking in. That's what we're doing. So we see Shrimpton, we check in, we see that she is struggling, that while McLean is going to the crime scene, Shrimpton is trying not to even look at her phone about this. So now the next thing we do, if we cut back to the house, I fear that the audience's mind is going to say, okay, we're done checking in with people. We're going to go back to Madeline and Norman because it's the house and that's where they are. So if we go to the exterior of the house and then the RV drives up, we will be confusing the audience when we don't go in the house. Therefore, we could also, so that leaves two other options. We could do Ted in his RV and show him driving past the house and then seeing Dundosky and pulling up. Or we could show Dundosky seeing Ted pull up and going to him. Those are the possibilities. I think one of the most important things you do when you are brainstorming, which is what I am doing, is just throw out all the possibilities. Don't censor yourself while you're doing this, and then you sort through them. You don't try to pre-plan where you're going. You say, here's what I have to accomplish. Ted has to pull up outside the house and Dundosky has to try and get rid of him and he won't leave. That's the scene. That's the action of the scene. How many ways could I tell that? What are all the ways I could tell it? And then you choose the one for various reasons that works. Hi, Roddy. Works for you. There is not a right or wrong. You could make a good argument for a lot of the other possibilities. By the way, this process that I'm going through is partly described in the video brainstorming and scrap piles. Not so much the scrap pile part, but the brainstorming part. The idea that you have to be both targeted in the thing you're trying to accomplish, the question you're trying to answer, and then really uncritical and loose and improvisational in your process of how you give yourself material to work with. Then once you've got those possibilities, you sort, you choose. Okay, so my first instinct is go to Ted, right? We go into McLean to Shrimpton. If we go to Ted, people will get it. We're now checking in on a new person. Oh, he's driving up. My main problem with that is being in an RV and seeing the house outside the window is visually, it's muddy. It's hard to know what you're looking at. It's hard to know what you care about in a scene like that. First of all, you've never seen, Ted has been in his RV, but in a very different circumstance. You wouldn't necessarily know. It's just not going to be fun for anyone watching it or making it. So my instinct is don't do Ted's point of view. Do Dundosky's point of view. Partly that's because I already came up with this image, which I think is funny, of Dundosky doing some yoga. The idea that this meth-dealing vigilante also tends to do some yoga in the morning, just interesting, just fun, just like, why not? So the idea would be to start with Dundosky doing his yoga and then seeing Ted's van, and Ted's van is out of place enough and distinctive enough that Dundosky goes over to it. That is the scene I am choosing to tell. All right. Actually, this is not going to be George's house. It's going to be George's street at the same time. Okay. Dundowski's van parked down the block from George's house is parked discreetly at a discrete distance. By the way, can you guys hear me? I've been sitting back a lot. When I write, I actually I usually have the lock turned off, so I actually sit like this. But I'm far from the mic and far from the, so I lock the back of the chair to keep me from doing that. But I do when I'm writing, I tend to slouch back. But I'm also aware that it means I'm not talking into the microphone. All right. Parked down the block. I want to say that I want to say a discrete distance because I want to point out that he's consciously staying out of sight. And I want to say down the block so that we understand where he is. All right. Thank you, Ellen. I appreciate that. That's good to know. Okay, so Dundowski is standing beside it. All right, here's one of those things. All right, climbs out of yoga pose. I'm not going to say which one. All right, so then what I want to do is suggest he comes out. We'll know who because it's his van. His repose falters as he sees. His repose falters as he sees. That's fancy, but it's not good. Ted's RV spewing smoke drives up and parks across the street from George's house. Okay. This feels like there's like from George's house. All right. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm not liking all the I don't like the passive is parked. That is a fair question, Di. I first of all, I'm not sure I even would. I certainly prefer a little chaos. Let's put it this way. However, I would say that it's really valuable to unconsciously have in your mind the structure, the traditional structure, a structure, a feeling of structure. I think that what I always find at this point in my life is that I will unconsciously shape things. This is partly because I have studied and worked from the formula for long enough that I respect its needs and boundaries. However, I am completely willing to push them if I think there's a good reason. Sometimes the good reason is simply I just want to not follow the formula, because when you follow the formula too strictly, it's boring. It's formulaic. That's the problem with the formula, is that it becomes formulaic, routine, predictable. Hi, Larry. So the answer is, do I consciously find the acts? Kind of semi. I am aware, as I have said before, I do not believe in the acts. I do not believe that the 3-act structure is the only existing structure for stories. That's patently wrong. However, I do like the 3-act structure for the very simple reason that it's beginning, middle, and end. And that is inherently a good thing. 3 acts means you have something starts, you learn who and what and where and why. You learn the stuff that would make you say, oh, this is a story about this. And then it gets going. That's the end of the first act. And then the second act is most of the story. And then towards the end of that, whatever complications have developed focus on a conflict or crisis or choice or revelation that will be the ending. That's the third act. So in that sense, that is an inherently true thing about a story. Tricky part is this is a pilot episode. It's not the whole story. It's an episode, so it has a beginning, middle, and end, but it also is only part of a larger story. So I both have to begin, middle, and end it, and just set up things to be continued later. That's the tricky game about series. So the answer is, I like to think in terms of beginning, middle, and end. On the other hand, I would not say you have to strictly you get down to, like, some people say on page this, you have to have this. That's just silly. There's the idea that yes, in terms of the business, the people who are reading it with the decision of whether or not to pay money to buy or hire your work or you, yeah, it's not bad to tip your hat to them, to say, I respect that you want me to get things going within the first 10 pages. Cool. Fair enough. Let me see if I can do that. Do I believe that if on page 11 you have not done X, Y, and Z, an alarm goes off? No, that's not true. That's how I feel about the acts. I also believe that, like, for some people, there's 5 acts. Especially TV writers tend to think in 5 acts because of commercial breaks. But since streaming doesn't have commercials, you also don't need to do that. But the 5 acts brings you sort of like a tipping point of there's 2, 1, 2, and that middle one is decisive in the sense that things are changing. There's so many ways to look at acts. Acts are not a thing. They're not an absolute form of nature. They're just how people decide to divide things. A lot of plays are in 2 acts, before and after intermission. A lot of plays are no acts at all. They're just a whole play. Who knows? So that's my answer to the acts question. Hold on. Acts. Actor to biz. By the way, while I'm semi-braked, let me do a second of self-promotion here. Or not self-promotion, semi-self-promotion. I was informed by Caillou Pettis, who is the editor of a book, who asked me to contribute an essay. This book, it's called Inspiring World of Horror. And what it is this guy, Caillou Pettis, hold on, let me increase this so that you can see, because if you look real close, my name's there. Anyway, this guy, Caillou Pettis, contacted a lot of people and said, hey, can you write a little essay on horror movies that influenced you creatively? And so I did write an essay, and it's in this book. At least I hope it is, because he told me it is. And it went on, it's pre-ordered on Amazon now. I will put the link in the description of this episode, so you'll be able to see it when I get done with the episode. And you can click the link, pre-order on Amazon if you have a Kindle. If you do not have a Kindle, do not worry, because on September 27th, when the book is published, you will be able to order it as a physical book. Anyway, like I said, mine is just one short essay among dozens, but I am kind of proud of it. It was a cool thing. He asked me what movie influenced me, and I couldn't think of one because I can never think of one anything. Somebody says, what's your top 10? I come up with 100. So I actually did 4. The Exorcist, Alien, Don't Look Now, and Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the 70s remake by Phil Kaufman and W.D. Richter. And it's an essay about what those 4 different movies had in common, because they're all movies of the 70s, which is a very specific filmmaking moment. And I talk about why it was an interesting time and why that particular movie, especially Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is pretty much inarguably the worst of the 4, it's just a little sloppy and silly and whacked out. But at the same time, that very sloppiness appealed to me personally. So I rather liked it. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I didn't do the book cover. I just wrote one of the essays, like I said. So I will say this again in September, but the pre-order just showed up. If you're Kindling it, if you're ordering it ordinarily, you can, I will remind you in September. Anyway, that's my little bit. Thank you, Alan. Yeah. Another, it's one of those things like, write an essay. I'm not like by nature an essay writer or anything. I don't believe they have an advanced copy yet. So this is just pre-order. It's still months down the line. Anyway, back to the question of structure. Roddy Tollins uses the 8 sequences for loose structure. Yeah, there's so many ways to look at structure. There's that story circle. There's many ways. So the answer is whatever helps you is good, but I would say definitely understand the conventional formula of conventional movies. The easiest way to do this, by the way, aside from reading books on it, which is nice, watching video essays on it, nice. The real way to understand structure is to watch stuff. And the stuff you like, watch it again and again and break it down, take it apart. Actually figure out the structure by taking it apart. Watch something you like and then write an outline of it. Say, how many scenes are this before this happens? What happens in each scene? Write yourself a little outline as if you were going to write that script, sort of reverse engineer it. Strongly recommend that. But also just watch so much stuff that you absorb the possibilities, that you absorb that some people will follow certain formula, other people will follow others. The more that you get in your head, the more that you have movies that you love that you can like if somebody said to you, by the way, if this is not true, this should be true. Somebody said to you, tell me the story of your favorite movie. Like, tell me your favorite movie. You should be able to tell them basically scene by scene what happened in your favorite movie. Favorite movies, since I don't have one. But the thing is, I could tell you at least the memorable parts of things I liked. And if you can't do that, you should be watching them until they've sunk into your subconscious enough that you can do that. That's really, really an important thing for a writer to do. You should be able, it's like, a soldier should be able to take his rifle apart blindfolded and put it back together. You should be able to watch a movie and watch it enough times over and over and say, okay, what happens in these scenes? What order do they go in? What is the structure of the things I think are good? Okay. Yes, I actually know several people who were scarred for life by The Exorcist. I'm not kidding about that. I'm talking about people who had nightmares for years. The Exorcist is a very powerful movie. As I say in the essay, I believe one of the reasons it's powerful is because it used a basis of documentary style realism, just the way the filmmaking went. And so that therefore, when it went supernatural, it seemed believable. I think that's part of it. The other reason that is a great story is because it is both carefully crafted, but it's not a formulaic story. You are actually tracking a lot of different characters. The Exorcist breaks most of the formulaic Hollywood rules because it was based on a very good book, like a very well-written book. And it was adapted by the author, who had been a TV writer. So he understood storytelling. It's a cool little story, The Exorcist. So there is a moral and emotional center to The Exorcist. It is not just a bunch of cool sequences. It is a story about a lot of different people approaching the same moral and emotional question, which is, what if something supernatural and demonic, and in whatever terms you care to use it, battling good and evil, what if that's coming into our lives? And the character arcs. So once again, I got to talk about this because it's really important. Character arcs. You want to look at a great example of character arcs, The Exorcist. If you can stand to watch it, it is very frightening, even now. However, the character arcs are brilliant because you've got the mom. Honestly, the girl is not that important. But then you have the police officer, and you have the priest, and you have the priest's boss, the exorcist himself. Each one of them is dealing with a totally separate problem. All the problems work together around this central question of how do you confront actual supernatural evil. So that's why I think the Exorcist works better than so many things which copied every one of its tricks. But they didn't copy that. They didn't copy the moral depth and complexity of the script. They didn't copy the structural complexity. In other words, we only understand certain problems because there's an unusual constellation of characters. There is the rules of screenwriting say you should not divide up your story among 5 major characters. But in fact, by having 2 priests, one of whom is convinced of his need and afraid of, but wearily ready for a direct confrontation with this evil because he has seen it before, who understands the spiritual nature of it, and then the other priest who is in fact losing his faith and is psychiatrically trained. And just by doing that, by dividing the problem of heroism among them, and then you have a cop who is investigating the violence associated with this evil, and beginning to recognize that it's not as simple as a criminal. There's so many layers by which we understand in a complex way, instead of just saying, there's a good guy and a bad guy. That's cheesy often. Okay, so hello, Jenny. Welcome. Hi, Flying Over Trout. Yeah, I'm glad I'm still doing them too. Hello, Donna. Welcome. Okay, hang on a second. So yeah, Friedkin, the tension in Sorg. Yes, this is the interesting thing. Friedkin is a really fascinating filmmaker. He was so intensely gifted, and yet just a disaster area of a person. This is from what I've read. I never met him, but actually I did. I briefly he taught at a class I was in once. But the main thing about Friedkin is he needed a good script. He's an amazing director, but he needed a good script. The only time he really got a great script was The Exorcist, and he was not powerful enough to F it up, to mess it up. Sorcerer, he was so powerful after The Exorcist, he could do what he wanted. And it's a messy project. It is amazing. The tension, it's like sequence for sequence. Sorcerer is a remarkable set of sequences. It's gorgeous. You want to see 70s filmmaking with all its texture and art filminess and guts. Sorcerer is amazing. Sorcerer is also just shallow and silly. Nowhere near as good as the original Wages of Sin. Anyway, yeah, so the answer is Friedkin is French Connection is a phenomenal movie and a disaster as a story. Anyway, yeah, I believe that in many ways Exorcist is his best movie. Sorcerer is phenomenal. French Connection is phenomenal, but they are messes. I rather, as I was asked earlier, do I like a little mess, Di? Yeah, that's why I can take some Friedkin, but honestly, Friedkin, he's a messy guy. Okay. Okay, you had a nightmare after watching Alien, Predator, Friday the 13th, Part 4, Jason Lives Again, and 5. So you watched them all in a row? No wonder you had a nightmare. Or did you have nightmares after each one? Let me know, Javier. Hello, Kirby. Okay, so that's where we are. Okay, let me get back to this because we're almost done with it. Climbs out, obviously, of it. Don't need that. Okay, I'm going to have to describe Ted's RV earlier. outside is as shambolic and wacky as the interior. In bumper stickers, collaged tabloid front pages, supermarket, marker, and scrawled marker? No, what I want to say is like he's written all over it. And messages from Ted that look like graffiti. Okay. Drives up the street. No, drives past. What am I thinking? Wrong. Hello, Ches. Very glad to have you. Don't need to call me sir. I am just an ordinary citizen like you. Okay, so. Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, I got to say, this Screenwriting Life podcast is really good. Let me see if I've still got that here. For those of you who are looking for something good to listen to and to join, the Screenwriting Life podcast, highly recommended. Just real insight into the struggles of professional screenwriters and aspiring screenwriters from some really fine people. Meg Lefauve and Lorianne McKenna run it, and they're great. But also, there is a Facebook group for those of you who are willing to overcome your completely legitimate reservations about encountering meta in any way. There's a Facebook group for the Screenwriting Life podcast. If you listen to the Screenwriting Life podcast, they ask you a question in order to be admitted to the group, which you have to listen to the podcast to get a sense of it to answer it. But basically, just they don't want bots. So basically, that group is a really great group. If you're looking for screenwriting support and encouragement and sharing, the Screenwriting Life podcast Facebook group is good. It's okay. I excuse your back. It's not a problem. Tea Princess, hello. Hi. Nice to meet you. I'm really glad that that's great. I am so happy to know that you are getting something out of it. That is super cool for me, and I'm so glad. It's so nice to have royalty in the house. Okay. So. Beatific. Okay. Thank you, Donna. Um, Chez's writing is short. Good. Keep writing. Good. Hitting the point where I'm mainly editing. That is great. Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah. That it is just good. It is just good to know that I am doing this for some reason other than my own ego. Really trying to keep my ego out of this, honestly. It is really supposed to be about the work. That is the name of the game. Okay. All right. Why Facebook though? As in, like, does it have to be on Facebook? I didn't choose it. But I believe it's because of the billions of people that you have access to it, and because the people who are running the screenwriting life are like me, not in they're in the an older generation. They're either Gen X or Boomers, and therefore they were on Facebook, and they said, how can we create a community without a lot of hassle? Facebook group. So that's my guess. Do I believe that they should or should not be on Facebook? At this point, I'm not a big fan of Facebook, but I recognize that it's where a lot of people I need to stay in contact with are, so therefore I'm there. Okay, what does Dundosky say to Ted? Are you for real with this? Hey, you for real with this? For real. Hey, what's the rumpus? That's not right, but I'm going to do it. What? Now I'm just going to... Hey, what's the rumpus? Hey. You just parked a billboard outside. You just parked a billboard outside there. Conspiracy nut billboard outside their house. This is not going to last, but it's my home. And my beliefs. First Amendment. First Amendment. Around the corner. Around the corner. Aw, thank you. Humble pie. Hey! Yay! That's funny. Yeah, you made it. You missed it. Fair enough. That's okay. I'm going to go another minute or two. You're okay. Good to see you, though, Division 5. I'm glad you're here. I hope you're well. It is damn hot here, by the way. This is... and we're in the cool part of Los Angeles. I don't mean cool like cool. I mean like temperature-wise. It's cooler. Division 5 is not that far from me physically. Okay. Take it around the corner. Take your amendment around. It's my home and my beliefs. Take First Amendment. Take your amendment around the corner before. Hey, Natasha. Okay. That's funny. I like that. I can get rid of this up, and then I can do... Okay, now this is something that, oh my God, Javier has pointed out that it is 113, so therefore I feel like a fool for saying anything about our, whatever it is, 80 or something here. Javier, have a drink, but drink some water too. Drink water, that's important. Don't just do the margaritas. Okay, this little bit is an example of a certain thing in screenwriting that you can and should do, which is you are allowed to try to entertain the reader as you describe things. You don't just have to hammer them down in practical, hard-bitten facts. You can say, essentially what I'm trying to describe is a certain bunch of actions, which are nonverbal, so therefore I could describe them, but I'm just having some fun. So when Ted says, this is my beliefs, and then I can say, Dundosky watches Ted's beliefs drive out of sight. I am winking at the audience. I am trying to entertain them and amuse them because the voice of the writer is a legitimate tool in entertaining and steering the mind of the reader. It's tone. I can't say how the director should direct it. I can't say the actors can act it. But by writing it in a certain tone, I can imply a certain humorousness that I would like this thing to have. If this was Schindler's List, this would not be appropriate. Although there are some funny bits in Schindler's List. But the main thing is that you need to style your tone of writing to the mental tone of the piece that you were trying to convey. That's a job. Okay, you watched Alien when you were 4. 8 when you watched Predator. And okay, yeah, okay, wow. So those are scary when you are a little child. They can frankly be quite scary, especially Alien. Alien of those, honestly, is the scariest of the bunch because the others are... There's a make-believe-ness to Predator and the Friday the 13th. The thing about Alien that's interesting is the amount of attempt to make it convincingly textured as an industrial landscape. That was one of the brilliant innovations of Alien. Sci-fi had not done that before. Sci-fi horror had never done it because there's very little sci-fi horror. King of... No, water. Water is part of it. Water. Everyone should be drinking water. It's good for you. Okay. With that said about the voice of the screen, just to have an editor like a novelist. No, they do not. They have a ton of executives and producers and various people who will throw in the comments of editing. However, there is almost never... There is no such thing as a person who's working with on your writing. There are people who serve that function in terms of telling you what they think you should do for business purposes or artistic purposes. They also have some other job. There are people who are creative executives, which is essentially like an editor for screenwriters. And they can be really great if they are good. Okay. All right. You know what? I should stop soon. That's a fact. For one thing, I need to get some water. I'm thirsty. Okay, great. So for those of you who were not here before, just briefly, look in the description of this video in about 20 minutes. I will have put a link for the Inspiring World of Horror pre-sale. I'm not going to mention it again till September when it actually is available, because right now this is just pre-ordering. Okay. So the script itself has its own voice that you want to convey. Yes, I say yes to that. I believe that is a key part of writing a script, especially now. But when the script is a sales document and a creative document and an actual script all at the same time. So therefore, I would say yes. It is very, very good to have a voice. It is very bad if the voice gets, honestly. Okay, so let me see this. Pilot list, in consideration, a series order. How do the people buy rights to an I'm going to very briefly talk about this. I will also grab it and talk about it more in another episode. I will AMAA that. Ask me almost anything. Pilot list in consideration. Okay, what you've mentioned is a bunch of different things. In consideration, do you mean for your consideration, or do you mean like companies are considering that? I don't know what that means. I suspect it's on websites that like the blacklist or things, is my guess. The question of how people buy rights to an IP script is separate things. IP, in theory, a company would buy the IP before the script is written. In other words, if a company wants IP, they will probably be negotiating with the people who own that IP. For instance, the publishers of a comic book, the owners of a song, whatever it is. That negotiation generally happens because there's a executive in the production company who's like, ooh, we need some IP. And then they go around and they look for it and they go, oh, here's a book, or here's a series of comic books, or here's a whatever, YouTube video. And they buy the rights to that. They don't usually buy them, by the way. They usually kind of rent them. Anyway, having got the rights to that, they will then hire someone to write a script. You should never write a script based on IP, based on somebody else's creative work, without a written agreement that lets you do that. Do not write, I'm going to write a Spider-Man script. or like, oh, here's a comic book that no one's ever done. I'm going to write a script from it. And then people will like that so much that they'll buy the script. That is not how it works. Create your own IP. If you are interested in IP, you are a producer. You are not a scriptwriter. If you can, and it's very hard and very unlikely that you can negotiate with a publisher or agent to get the rights for yourself to a piece of IP to write the script, cool. It will probably cost you a lot. But the answer is, the way that works is that IP means intellectual property. In other words, a story or a written work or a film that somebody thinks would be good to use as the basis for a script, a new version. That's how that works. So pilot list and in consideration and series to order, I don't know what you're referring to there. A series to order would mean that someone in a production company or a network has bought a pilot script, and when they buy a pilot script, they can do a couple of things. One, they can just say, we're just going to buy this pilot and make this pilot and decide based on that pilot if we're going to order the rest of the series. Or sometimes they can say, we're buying the pilot and we're committing to making 12 episodes of this. Or various things related to that possible, like they could say, what they used to do is say, we're going to make a pilot, and if we like the pilot, we will order 6 or 8. And if that's good, we'll order the rest of the 22 that makes up an ordinary series of network television. Millions. IP depends. I mean, in theory, if you can find, how much could an IP cost? IP is intellectual property, which means the rights to something, which is an option or a purchase, but I guarantee you won't be able to purchase them. But what you do is you sort of rent them. And you would sign a legal contract it would be a legal negotiation with a business affairs department for like the rights to a book or the rights to a comic book. That could be in theory $10. It won't be unless you're talking about an unpublished book. But once agents and publishers and those people get involved, they are going to hold out for an exorbitant amount of money, tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars, because that's their job. Their job is to milk giant corporations who are making network shows for as much money as they can. If you are like a wannabe writer who is going to say, hey, trust me, I'm going to write this script. It's going to be so good that they'll buy it, that your novel will seem like a good project, and then they'll make it into a series. If that is a published book, they're going to say, we can't give that to you, unpublished screenwriter, because if we give it to you for $100 and then somebody else comes along and they find their book and they want it, they're going to offer us $100,000 and we're going to have to say no to the $100,000 because we gave it to you for $100. So we can't do that. The fact that you like it indicates that it's likable. If it's likable, we have to hold out for more money. So that's it. I have gone way long, and I am, as I said, tired and thirsty. So I am going to stop for now and see you tomorrow. Go write something.